Inside Story Uganda. Real source of.
Let me tell you, many people don't understand me. At times I wake up and cry. I regret the day I met Museveni. Because if I had not met Museveni, Sali's a political career young. If people don't understand him. Have you read my book? These people, you don't understand them. When they killed the people and sold their organs, I was not involved. But somebody gets the arrogance that I must produce the evidence, kill the evidence, to give me what? Why? Failure to understand. You cannot humiliate somebody's son. I'm a product of a sexual act between my father and my mother. I was not brought from a supermarket. I was not made by carpenters. That's why these people don't understand. Computer chankwazi computer yoshi. I'll never work in this government again. You humiliate me. You saw me on Kasasa. Ngomewe ichakolera. Mind is the son of a human being. Anyafe basula bakaba. Kagati nkugamba. Temutegeera basajja bano. Bujozi tukinesonga. Bitter people. Ndiolaba enkola yabwe gye bakolamu. Bo tebalabwa. Ate nze kyensinga okwewuunya. Sudiru nemuyamba. Bakuba mu mawulire gaabwe ti embaga ya muwala wa Sudiru yali esudde banka ye bagibbe era ne bagibba. But I fought for Sudiru. Kooti neerulinga nti banka ye bagitwala kuba nakuga a receiver and a liquidator wenda bategeere. Sudiru ne mumukubira essimu tagikwata. Ngwajja kunjafuwaza. Wali gate mani. Toyinza kunjafuwaza nze siwasanga kuwa mmwe. Naye emwenya abwenya lwabo ogwe gyawonyeza amaka gange nesezaala we naamuleka mwenebone ngende mbeegayirire sijja beegayirira mwali temunnajja naliwo sijja kubeegayi I will never kneel before lwabo ogwo kubanga gye yakolera emisango gye saaliyo he must humble himself. Sisobola kill me but I will never humble myself before lwabo ogwo. Okitegedde ekyo
kakkana
anti nkubuulira
kakkana njagala okakkane.
That's one.
Nnyonnyola katabo kano.
Two, when Muhoozi
tuddeyo katono ku kya Sudiri kuba mu katabo mwali.
Yes.
Ogambye Sudiri wamulwanira naye ne bw'okuba essimu tagikwata. Lwaki?
Even my relative.
Lwaki?
Wabogo believes nti he can suffocate my family. Ichonkozi nali mutite.
Anti Lwabogo si ye Sudiri. Nze nkubuziza Sudiri. Nti ki?
Even my relative. Believes he can suffocate me.
Kati Sudiri ye mwana muto gwe walwanira. Tugende ku kiri kyobadde ogamba ekintu.
Agati nkubulira nawandika akatabo katemba gamba. Relate it to today. Today's situation. Do you believe nti kyogera sisobola kukola mu gavumenti ya Museveni? Tekisoboka. Waleta appointments na mu benyondo.
Wagikola mudda.
Sisobola kugiddamu.
Okujjako gamba sisobola giddamu.
Look at the situation now. Mukitunuulire. Do you believe, let us ask, Parliament guaranteed this Italian woman to construct the Rubowa hospital? Guaranteeing. The agreement was signed by your representatives, the Attorney General, the Solicitor General. Parliament approved it. Baba aliya sente nga tebamanyi ti ababbi bebaziina tebasasula mukazi babadde bakomyewo bakiyise mu supplements. bwokabanda bwani bwagala kulya sente abo bamuwaga kivumbi. That's their game. They are not fighting for you, because a person who is fighting for Uganda would say, where it is area money, what has gone wrong. A chapa we bagenda okuzimba hospital kiri mu dispute. Bana abasajja ba mafia bwe bakola ebintu bakola bamanyi kiri bwatu kate baliwo. This man so-called Gobi, was he there when this Italian, when the parliament was guaranteeing to leave Sasula? It is going to apply to the pipeline, Tanzania pipeline. The Tanzanians are going to construct pipeline yawe muja kusasulanga timuli mafuta betumina gemutadde. It is going to apply to the standard age mwegenda okuyita mwonna baagulawo ababbi. It is has applied to an inland port. Omusajja yajja wano n'alaba president. My first time to see Museveni quarreling was Mulwana. That was the first time. Mulwana ngaga nti omusajja yali ekyapa kye bwe baali bagenda okuzimba mubuuze Seiko baamulumba ekiro ne pistol ne bakimuggyako ne bamusaba $1,500,000. $400 million ezazigenda okusaasanya amasanyalaze mu Uganda bazibba ku kitutu yali minisita wa energy. Are we going to develop this country? Why do you join the East African community? Kubanga you are going to be the sick man with the East African community. Why? Media yabo until they believe that the man is humiliated and called a madman. Mirundi bamuyise Kampala. Nobody. I want people to ask a subject, general subject. There is nobody who was in that meeting where I was thoroughly humiliated can have the guts to give me a job in the government again, unless you are looking for a hammer. I tolerated abuses. Banku bambuke dindi mulalu. My mother was the only Muganda who was targeted by the rioters. Umwana wabo agira Museveni. How did Museveni reward him? Tebagala mumulimu. If you don't give me money, this time I need the money. I don't want to be on Muhozi's committee, because how can I meet the rich people? This man, the Muko, Kalugire, was given billions to defend Abatabantu. Ezange bazigana. I must be under somebody.
Ekizibu kyofuna ebintu bye bisinga. Biri person.
Yes.
Ekyokubiri.
Should I what
omaliriza naawe ogamba nze naye bampe sseeki.
Ikizakitire kubanga mbabanja.
Kati olwanirira bannayuganda oba olwanirira
ani yasooka okuba bukofiira munyonyi bakugamba first fight for yourself. Ani yasooka okuba bukofiira nakuba bukofiira bumeka t-shirt mmeka obutabo bujjudde wange bumeka lili Museveni pemi
kati wali ku contracting
okukola. He wrote me a letter ne sente zange zembabanja bazikwata. You people abanyankole tikinesonga ne tikinesonga ekitayina nsonga mukikolere ku balala. Myamwe very bitter man nyinzo benyondo n'ebyewuunyi kakati nkunyonyedde
bwetudda ku kifaananyi ekigazi.
What do we have now? What we have now, nabagambye tiyo Buganda yaggwawo dda. Tubadde tulina omukinjaji atunda Buganda kati asigazza mulokoni. When you look at the component of this government, Baganda should get worried. Tetulinayo kifo kyonna mu government. President si Muganda, Vice President si Muganda, Prime Minister si Muganda, ne ba deputy tekuli Muganda.
Bwe baaliyo abo boomenye nga Vice President Muganda, nga Prime Minister Muganda, nga bwe baaliyo waliwo njawulo ki?
Kakati njagala ekyobuuza okimanyi nti olugi lwaliko sitapuli ne bajjako sitapuli lwafiirwaki balukonda ne lugwa tulina ekituyita accidental benefit. Why did at that time, why do we have former vice president of Kenya, former vice president second, former prime minister Kintu Musoke, former principal private secretary to the president, who n'abasoga bemuyita mbo omusoga abagasoga babasinga at least bayinayo Kadaga bamukuba n'agaana okufuluma, bayinayo Gundi Lumumba abasoga abasoga temwekana nammwe mumwafulumira ddala. What's the reason? The reason is simple. Bobi Wine bwe yajja yasubinga Buganda yonna tuyinza kuddira nyumba gyokomerera na kalitunsi nojjako kalitunsi noteekako gasiya. Kakati mwe mukitegeere nti Uganda can be governed without Baganda. Ukitegete? Uganda is now governed without Baganda.
Naye Baganda mwebali.
Anti with what?
Mwebali.
Anti bali wa. The center, you are the largest nationality. Power has shifted to Teso and Western Uganda. Why is everybody in Kenya kneeling before the Kikuyus? Why? The Baganda are only the largest tribe in African politics rotates around ethnicity. African politics rotates around ethnicity. How can the largest tribe fail to get slots, powerful slots? Can't think about it. Chobora nsinza kukola mu government. Brain yange si ya government. Banjo ogani banku bakutaka. Kabushenga ne bakulubya. Mbabanja milioni 10. Kulubya ne kabushenga urupe.
Ozibanjani.
Kulubya ne kabushenga.
Azachi.
No muku.
Ngazachi
nnyo emyaka 8. Abana bange ne bataso.
Bobanje 10.
Namwabire wafu.
Bobanje 10.
Wanute wirupe.
Bobanje 10.
Alitegula.
Bobanje 10. Bobanje 10 zachi.
Tujja kubeera nga tujoga. Singa muzeyi babu teyandifendi tumwebaze yetalagidde pulogulaamu zange zonna ziveewo. Kwani mutani wa Kajiji? Kajiji lwana kasajja gwe ajjako pulogulaamu zange. Mutani wa Kajiji kati mulabye yeegaana. I don't know about this deal. Why? Because government does not have people who can defend it. Mwite baba wa sente zitambula. Because we started with the coffee marketing board, we liberalized. Kakati ate bakugana emwanyi ziwereddwa omuntu omu. This is argued where omulimi anoonyaki kufunamu. You tell us the reason why you have gone back to monopolism. Whether kubanga Ben Kiwanuka balwanagana n'Obote. Ben Kiwanuka yali agamba Obote, let us increase the price of coffee so that people grow more coffee using the reserves. Kakati Obote n'agamba Ben Kiwanuka, what if you exhaust the reserves? Najja naga no mwete musobola kutunda mwanyi bweru. It fluctuates, it was what tukole coffee marketing board. Mwenga price ya mwe fwe tubawa government yeyongeze bei yemwanyi. Museveni najja n'agamba modernizing agriculture. Yes, emwanyi yenoonyeza akatale kayo akataasa ne kagula omutwalo. Today we are going back. Mao Setongo yagamba 2 feet forward 1 foot backward. Nze nawandika akatabo kange back to the same mujini. Chiche mutakyusiza UTC mwagijjawo mukomyawo basi. Lero mwagijjawo kati mukola leero endala. Chiche nedda mutubuulire olaba ne education mukyusiza curriculum. Twagala ba scientists. Yes, is every Japanese an engineer. Abucha mubikole new curriculum, new books, new lecturers, new what mubikole. Ndianara DC is a former DC. Yes, you are scientific. Jawo DC omutumala DC. Tukwera ku mungalo. Akyuse kinene nnyo era DC ono olwokuba akyusiza n'afuuka DC kati akola emirimu mingi nnyo. Administration nnungi nnyo. Kati kamaliza n'ekintu kimu ekyebijambiya. Baatemye ebijambiya ekyengera. I have a house there. Zenna netiwaka ku kyalo n'abasirikale. Nabatumidde abaatemye ebijambiya. do it again, I'm going to arrest you. Tebasuze mchenge. Na kwezi, ni Randy Road wabafudi ya dusi. Weda mbawuli ya kusimu kubyuma byangu. Is the money there? Is the money there?
Ebyuma yo bi station is
Hey. Ubuzo mserikali wangu uyu. Tebaduse. Nobody badi wanga nkumu. Tebaduse je bali. Ni Randy Road ya dusi. Kakati mwemulo woza. Tiebijambia is a network. No. Museveni yagamba owe mundu yenna gwe tukwata ne mundu n'ebyambalo koti maaso. Kati ebijambia biteeka mu koti maaso tu. Ebijambia bw'oba otema tebikola noise. You fire a bullet bakwata. Kati bwe bamaze okukuba ewaza enekyengera baalase eri kubuzaabuza. Bano ngamba manyi bawulye ku byuma byabwe. Baatemye. Kyengera tebaliiwo badduse. Ekyandaze nti omusajja yatunze ne banne ba brokers. These are brokers. Bwe yamaze okutunda n'ababba n'ategeera munne n'amukubira essimu tebagenda kulumba. Yazze mu ddiira n'atuula bazze ne bumaster key bagule ddirisa lye bayingire n'olugi n'akwata omukono gw'omusajja n'agamba omukazi we leeta ejjambiya leeta enkumbi okuba omukono omukazi yagaanye banne ne bajja basika omusajja oyo omusajja ne bamusinza amaanyi. Kakati the question is, singa ndidde kabasayidde, I arrest the woman and the man. One. Why was the woman reluctant okuleeta enkumbi oba jambi? Two. Ayinza kuba yatidde. Two. How did this man hang around in his sitting room to grab the hand? Three. Why was this man sure that the Bijambia people who had raided his home had no guns? Tobiraba ebyo ne walabyewo bwe nayogedde nenjogera n'abasekule bange ne batambula ku kyalo ne bagenda ne we baavudde Randy Road yadduse olwo the police ni Kyengera neisa meeting nekola obudde mbawulira ku simu yange. Has the man arrived? Kakati mu bumwe n'aba muzanya
mani ki
mi
Tamale
andi nze nabagambye njagala bampe coffin 10 nziteeke mu lujja lwange Ekyengera baddemu bateme nyondo nze nkwata abantu ekyalo mutayimbwa ffe tubawe coffin zaabwe bate bakola
kwegamba buli gwokwatawo ng'ate
police mpe coffin 10 kubanze mbamanyi bwe bali era badduse ne Randy Road yadduse. Kakati mmwe akatabo kano okalabye nti kabiri meka
mu 19
naye whatever he predicted kati next time nenda kuleta akatabo kayita the state house curse.
Okay.
State house curse kakulaga buli president wa Uganda abalaba abanoonyeza walala nga bali mu nju.
They are malicious deals, and B, they have access to the president and therefore able to monitor his actions. This can be illustrated using several examples. 1. Francis Xavier Kitaka formed his company, Welcome Uganda Limited, in 1967 to provide veterinary services to cattle keepers in Uganda. It should be recalled that at this time open corruption had not eaten our society. Therefore, Kitaka's company has survived all these years because it delivered quality services. There exists similarities between a headmaster, a businessman, and a veterinary drug seller. Although it takes tests and exams for the headmaster to determine the performance of students, the businessman can quickly understand that his products have been rejected by the market, judging from the sales. The same applies to a drug manufacturer. The users can quickly realize the effectiveness of a drug and decide to either buy or reject it. It's a common practice among Ugandan mafia to monopolize business. That is why when one notorious mafia decided to invest in Pioneer buses, a whole organization, UTODA, had to be discredited and disbanded so that Pioneer bus company could enjoy monopoly in transport business. When a valuable product from fish called enuni became a hot item on international market, the mafia pulled excuses to control Lake Victoria. When mafias realized that government government had allocated huge sums of money to livestock farming, the mafias plotted to remove Vincent Sempija from the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries. Reports were published in the mafia-controlled media, New Vision, claiming that cattle were dying in Ntoroko district. Roasted meat, muchomo, sold by roadside vendors was destroyed, while photographs of dying cattle and empty valley dams were splashed on television screens. All this, however, was part of a malicious campaign intended to remove Sempija from office and replace him with a member of the mafia group. All this failed. One would ask, why couldn't district authorities intervene and provide water for animals? More so, Joy Kabasi, as a junior minister, would have intervened, since it is her role as the one in charge of animal husbandry. It was at this time that Kabasi led a team of officials to Botswana, ostensibly to consult on way forward, since Botswana is one of the leading exporters of animal products on the European market. However, since all mafia-oriented programs are based on deception and excuses to steal government funds, this was no exception. The real motive was to get money. When they arrived in Gaborone, they were advised not to buy bulls but semen. They insisted and bought the bulls. Interestingly, the bulls could not mount Ugandan small and weak cows. Their real intention was not to improve the quality of livestock, but an excuse to steal government funds. They succeeded in this and bought 2 bulls at a cost of 8 million. When the cost of transportation was added, the total cost of bulls rose to 10 million. Interestingly, no one can tell where the 2 bulls are. Eventually, a rumor was circulated that livestock in Uganda had been invaded by drug-resistant ticks, and Museveni's cows were victims. This is what mafias do, to force the president to release money to the mafia-oriented projects. President Museveni quickly contacted Kitaka to provide drugs to his cows. The president's directive was an opportunity to the mafia to undermine Kitaka and take over the business. They alleged that the drug Kitaka had provided was mere water and color. They solicited support from Lieutenant Colonel Edith Nakalema, who operated beyond logic. She moved swiftly as usual, without much reasoning. Kitaka's children, his son and daughter, were arrested. The chief mafia in charge of media, Kabushenga Robert, moved in and gave this falsehood publicity in both the New Vision and Bukede to justify the arrests. Let me pose the following questions to well-thinking Ugandans. Question number 1. Is there any Ugandan or credible businessman who can provide fake drugs to his reliable customer or customers? My answer is no. No serious businessman can do that. Number 2, can any credible company be offered business by the president mess with his cow's life? My answer is no. Once given that chance, any businessman would provide the best drugs for the president's cows. Number 3, what could Kitaka benefit by providing water and color, apart from mafia members? Nakalema and Kabushenga, no sensible person can believe this heap of rubbish. Number 4, why were Kitaka's children arraigned before court without first consulting the president who gave them the job? The answer is malice intended to tarnish Kitaka's credibility and the reputation he has jealously protected over the years. Number 5, a reputable research company later exonerated Kitaka's company after it was found out that the drugs supplied to the president were genuine and effective. The mafia's plan involving Kabushenga and Nakalema had already inflicted reasonable damage to Kitaka. The mafia-owned company had already been selected to supply the drugs and replacing Kitaka's company. These facts are not known to ordinary people, and therefore the works of the mafia are not exposed to the public. I personally do not sympathize with the victims of mafia groups, including Kitaka, who in such situations resorted to Christianity. I am a believer in witchcraft, and no one can maliciously undermine my interests and expect me to resort to praying to God. The mafias are agents of the devil, and therefore God does not control and punish them for their evil deeds. I cannot under any circumstances seek legal redress or a meeting with the president. After destroying the victim, the mafias resort to their arrogant slogan, Tichinenshonga, meaning there is no problem. I say no to a traditional Muganda like me, Kinenshonga, because even when the victims of mafia mechanization have evidence to defend themselves, the mafia-oriented media cannot give them the platform. Those are the facts about Kitaka. And we got Sudiri. The plot against Crane Bank started in the same mafia style. The mafia is like an old monkey which does not learn new tricks. As usual, articles were published in newspapers alleging that Crane Bank had collapsed because Sudiri had lavishly spent customers' money on her daughter's wedding. Photographs of the expensive drinks served at the wedding were splashed on front pages. This was intended to blame Sudiri for the collapse of his bank because the mafia gang knows that the public is gullible and swallows whatever the newspapers vomit. The use of the wedding of Sudiri's daughter was also intended to isolate Sudiri from his customers. The public could not sympathize with Sudiri because he had squandered money belonging to customers. Out of experience, the mafia knows that Sudiri could not get the opportunity to engage his customers in order to confront the thieves who were Bank of Uganda and the mafia itself. This is why Bank of Uganda intervened quickly to transfer the accounts of Crane Bank customers to another bank as if to assure them that their money was safe. This completely isolated Sudiri from his customers. To them, Bank of Uganda was a savior, when actually it was the real enemy. As usual, when these things happened, I came out to confront the mafia gang and pose a number of questions. One, for many years, Crane Bank had been awarded by Bank of Uganda as the best performing bank. What had gone wrong overnight? The truth was and is that Crane Bank was like a healthy person who suddenly dies having been given poison. Number two, the argument that the lavish wedding of Sudiri's daughter led to the collapse of Crane Bank was also a very silly one and childish. It is like blaming a cat for the collapse of a financial empire of a tycoon because he used the money to buy milk for the cat. How much does it cost to feed a petty? As I explained earlier, this was intended to incite the public against Sudiri, who can ask if ordinary people can organize weddings or social functions. What about Sudiri Rupeleria, who has been recognized as one of the wealthiest businessmen in Uganda? Number three, the mafia gang also overlooked their failure to explain how a collapsing bank had enough funds to be transferred to DFCU and how the deal was quickly clinched. Why did the DFCU find Crane Bank that was allegedly bankrupt attractive? In the case of Greenland Bank, Bank of Uganda handed over the bank to a liquidator. However, when it came to Crane Bank, it was given to a receiver. This means that it was easy for Crane Bank to reclaim its loans. These salient issues are deliberated and not debated in the mafia-dominated media. Debating such issues awakens the public and exposes the hand of the mafia. This has been the practice of the mafia in all their schemes. They direct public attention to the wedding, knowing that the public will not ask for how much the wedding cost. More importantly, how can a doctor who is supposed to monitor a patient say he died because of failure to access drugs that are available in the hospital? Is it the duty of the central bank to supervise commercial banks? The banks are monitored on a daily basis. What exposes Bank of Uganda more is that branches of both Crane Bank and Greenland outside Uganda were not affected, which brings the blame to the door of Bank of Uganda. In my earlier submission, I stated that the mafia infiltrated and captured all strong institutions in the country. Why? Unlike past religious leaders who were more interested in holistic missions, the current crop of religious leaders is money-oriented. Some of them are involved in criminal activities like land eviction. This is how they have forged strong bond with the mafia gang. Since the mafia gang is very close to the president, and religious leaders outcompete each other in stealing money from the president, it also created a strong bond between the two. The mafia gang can easily facilitate the religious leaders' access to the president. This is so because in their attempt to succeed Museveni, the mafia gang needed the backing and support of religious leaders. Religious leaders who are expected to protect public interests, just like past leaders, have joined the mafia gang. In case of Mengo, the administration center of Buganda Kingdom, it's worse. The mafia did not capture the institution, but took total control of the running of the kingdom. They used mafia-dominated newspapers like Bukede and the New Vision. In fact, unlike other Ugandans who depend on their tribesmen in times of trouble, the Sultan does not utter a single word. The Sultan prefers sacrificing Baganda to condemnation because those Baganda are undermined by Robert Kabushenga, who is a strong partner of both the Kabaka and the Sultan. This explains the high toll of Baganda politicians in government because the mafia gang knows that Sultan cannot utter a single word. The Anglican Church is in the same boat. Like the Catholics, they are also in a close marriage with the mafia gang. From this attack or partnership, a company was formed on the lines of Buganda Land Board. Whenever Buganda Land Board evicts people from land, such reports never find their way in the mafia-dominated media. The role of this company was to buy assets given to banks as mortgages. This operates the same way their network in hospitals do to uproot human organs for export. When banks are deliberately closed by corrupt officials in Bank of Uganda, this company grabs the assets and sells them. An alarming story concerning Tefe Bank when unsuspecting peasants were made to believe that it was a bank for the kingdom and headed by the Kabaka. In order to hoodwink the Baganda, the Kabaka became chairman of the board of its directors. It was further urged that the establishment of Tefe Bank was one of the big steps to restore Buganda Kingdom. A widespread campaign was carried out in Buganda, directing all Baganda to open up accounts with the Tefe Bank. It was proudly announced that the Kabaka had opened up his official account, which the Baganda call Enkuruze. However, despite this campaign and mafia tactics, majority of Baganda remembered that Mengo had started a similar bank in the 1950s, which fleeced its customers. The name Tefe means a goat that must be saved by the visitor. In Kiganda tradition, whenever an important guest visited the home of a friend, he was given a goat. It was at the guest's discretion to decide whether to kill the goat or to save it and take it home. In case he decided to take it home, he would have saved the goat from being killed. This is the origin of the name Tefe, implying that the bank was meant to save its customers from other banks that were fleecing them of their money. Sadly, in return, it turned out that it was doing the opposite. However, at the time Tefe was closed by Bank of Uganda for non-performance, its management was under Mr. Kabugo, rest in peace, who had worked at Bank of Uganda. To cover its creditors, the Mengo-owned media only stopped at mentioning his posts in Bank of Uganda. The mafia gang, in their shameless style, grabbed the mortgages entrusted to Tefe Bank by fellow Baganda. The mafia operates like a cannibal. It eats its patients, including those it could have saved. In order to cover up their footmarks, they jumped on Greenland Bank, applied the same tactics, claiming it was the successor of Tefe Bank. It was again reported that the Kabaka had transferred his accounts, inclusive, to Greenland Bank. Eventually, the same thing happened to Greenland Bank, and its assets were grabbed by the mafia. The same tactics were applied to Cooperative Bank and many others. It's a fundamental political science principle that success after success is not good because it makes one start taking things for granted. This is what happened to the mafia gang. Armed with this success, they thought they would use the same tactics on Crane Bank, which has ended up exposing them. What government needed to do is to arrest all members of the gang, confiscate their assets, and accept that it was a mistake to hire a cannibal surgeon in its referral hospitals. Government should also take responsibility to restore these banks. How a society changes. I have always urged in my talk show programs on radio and television that society takes between 20 and 50 years to change. It's also possible that it can take longer. The case of colonialism, for instance, in South Africa, it took a very long period for ANC to liberate the people from apartheid. The Boers considered themselves as the bona fide citizens who had nowhere to go. At the same time, native black South Africans looked at the Boers as invaders in their land. But a solution had to be sought to solve this challenge. A similar situation prevailed in the Soviet Union. This is why it took 70 years for the Union to collapse. On the other hand, West and East Germany united after 50 years. Similarly, the Tutsis of Rwanda went back to their country after 50 years. The monarchs were abolished and restored in Uganda 20 years later, 1966 to 1986. More so, the people of Benghazi returned to Tripoli after 42 years of Gaddafi's rule. This means that when a regime overstays in power, many of the people who suffered or witnessed their atrocities die. This also means that after 50 years, the people who were 10 years also at the advent of the regime would have turned 60, and a large percentage would have died. Such a phenomenon brings new perceptions in the society. In South Africa, Julius Malema has become a problem to the leadership of ANC because the youth not need to be reminded of the apartheid because they now face new challenges like unemployment and those related to land ownership. On the other hand, democracy is also becoming another challenge. Democratic governments must address challenges of groups like youth and women, as well as peace, protection of human rights, and poverty. This is the reason why governments have embarked on universalities, including education for all and sports which unite the population. Furthermore, the youth and women have been allocated mandatory representation at all levels of leadership, including parliament. If the youth are not properly catered for, they are likely to be used by opportunistic groups to mete out violence. All the factors highlighted above apply to Uganda, and therefore it is political naivety for the mafias to undermine the influence of people like Brian White. The mafia doctrine is that anybody who is not a member of the gang must be undermined and destroyed. Many countries have revisited the issue of what is referred to as dirty money. History talks about a British pirate, Sir Francis Drake, who depended on riding and ransacking ships on seas. Sir Drake went back to England with the loot, including 3,000 bars of gold. Surprisingly, the Queen of England knighted him, and he is now referred to as Queen's Pirate. Italy was devastated during the Second World War, and it was not industrialized at the level of Germany or UK. However, it is the Italian mafias that developed Italy to gain membership in the G8 club. The Nigerian government takes its diplomatic muscle, especially in Africa, to protect its nationals whose wealth is threatened by host countries. The Abuja government urges that some governments target Nigerian businessmen and deport them with an intention to grab their wealth. Take an example of Kenya. After the fall of Abyegenye, many Rwandan businessmen, including Kabuga, who owned a radio station in Kigali, were accused of inciting genocide that claimed 1 million people before he fled to Kenya. Habyarimana's widow, Agatha, and businessman Kabuga were protected by the Kenyan government. President Daniel Arap Moi threatened to arrest officials from the ICC if they came to Kenya in pursuit of a genocide suspect. The main reason behind Moi's decision was because the suspects had invested heavily in Kenya. In the same vein, the eldest son of Zambian President Kamuzu Banda had been protected by Kenyan authorities. Banda Jr. is accused of having involved in corruption scandals during his father's presidency. Interestingly, even when Moi lost power, the new leadership did not surrender the suspects because of the heavy investments he had in Kenya. In Britain, although an Egyptian-born tycoon has been a perennial headache to the British monarchy, including the Queen's husband, the man is actually accused of masterminding the killing of Princess Diana and her boyfriend.
Ali Fayed accused the husband of the Queen. Yes.
But the government has always protected his wealth. What they only denied him is British citizenship. I finally ask, why should the Ugandan government lack a clear policy on this? Many younger Ugandans who have acquired wealth through unclear sources have been treated differently. After the detention of Haji Nasa Sebagala, Dr. Kiza Besige's wife Winnie Byanyima wondered why government was protecting those who steal public funds, and therefore urged that Sebagala should be surrendered to foreigners. After serving his 1.5 year sentence in the US, Sebagala received a hero's welcome to Uganda. Prominent politicians like the then DP leader Dr. Kawanga Semogerere and the late Sebanakis received him at Entebbe Airport. Sebagala was never treated as a thief who had embarrassed Uganda. Many Ugandans defended him that he was a different thief because he had stolen from Bazungu. Does it make sense? Even the president who abhors corruption appointed him his senior advisor and minister, only that he was not endorsed by the voting committee of parliament. Completed on Sunday 13th October 2019 at 9:30 a.m. at Chengera, written by Tamale Mirundi. 219. Kakati mbadde nsaba tukwatire kukatonaawo tumale obubaka buno butono tukomewo awo tulyoke tukole awo uzikyaliwo osobole okubannyonnyola oli ku kyenda katono oli ku kyenda katono oli ku kyenda katono oli ku